This is the Simpit video blog, and today's story comes to us from iRacing, where yesterday they released a new build of the sim, an update to the sim, and this comes every 12 weeks, and this update was a big one. Not all updates are equal, but this one was definitely bigger than some. A lot of different things. We're going to talk about some of the details of this build. Some of the features are worthy of really talking about and knowing what they really mean, starting with their easy anti-cheat. Now, I've talked about cheating a lot lately, and I'm not talking drug testing. They're not drug testing, but they've always had anti-cheat methods within iRacing. That's very normal for any software company, but they are now using a third-party system using easy anti-cheat, and this actually takes it to a whole nother level. So in addition to all the things they've done on their own behind the scenes, you have a whole other secondary program that is running, verifying that everybody's computer is running the same, and hopefully doing the best to make sure that there are no cheaters out there. And I hate to admit it, but where there is racing, there is cheating. Where there is gaming, there is cheating. And I'm glad to see that iRacing is taking a very aggressive approach to making sure, because their service, the online racing there, is different than most online racing. The competition there is extremely competitive, and in some cases, there's a lot at stake. Championships worth a lot of money. So anti-cheating is a very important element, and again, my hat's off to them for looking at that. Another thing let's talk about. Dynamic tracks. So last build they did dynamic weather. Dynamic tracks. Now what they're talking about, this is very cool. It means that the track is going to change during practice, during qualifying, during the races. You're going to have buildup of rubber as the cars run around the track. So if you're not really knowledgeable of racing, just imagine a schoolyard that just sat out for a couple of weeks. You're going to get dust and dirt built up on it. If you were to take a race car to that, you would spend laps running around doing nothing but picking up dirt, cleaning the track. Once it's clean, the rubber from your tires can start to build up on the ground as your friction wears them off. And that's something that is very typical to a racetrack, and you will have changing conditions based on buildup. This is something they've implemented into the sim, and it's going to really change the way it performs in a race and during practice, and people are going to have to be a lot more sensitive to what the car is doing and what the conditions are doing to the car and its setup. Now, with this buildup of tire, another thing happens, and I'm sure you've heard the term marbles. If you're a veteran, you know what they are, sure. If you're not, well, when a car tire goes around the corner, that friction is pulling the rubber to the side. That rubber will actually peel off and come off on the edges in these little round shapes of rubber, and they'll get flung off the tires, and those are called marbles, and those will fall off the driving line for the most part. So when you come around the corner and you're trying to go around someone, for an example, you're going to go through these little rubber pieces with your hot, sticky tires, and you're going to pick up those marbles, and it's going to make things very difficult for a lap or two as you have compromised friction from your tires because they're no longer perfectly round. That is something else that has been implemented into the build, and it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out for some important races for people. It's going to be interesting to see who makes the adjustment well versus who doesn't or isn't sensitive to those changes and getting a grip on it. Another part of all of this is really called variable track temperatures, where basically the sun, the position of the sun, the angle of the track in relation to the sun, even the color of the surface will affect how much heat is absorbed. And if you ever look at a race and they talk about temperature, they'll talk about air temp versus track temp. And the track will absorb heat because traditionally they're black, they have rubber built up on it, they got cars running over it, heating it up, and it will raise the temperature of the track. This is going to also happen with this new dynamic track build, and that's really also going to change things throughout the day. People are going to have to be sensitive to the air temperature and how that translates to the track. And in a perfect world, if you had a track that was cleaned, had a good amount of rubber buildup from cars running on it, and then let it cool down perhaps in the early evening or early morning, that's going to be your optimal grip moment. And anything from that, you're going to be slipping and sliding just a little bit. So that's all very big deal. With this, there is the V6 car tire model, or tire model, not car, but tire model. They've basically put this on just about every car. There's still a handful of cars that don't have that update to the V6 tire model. In addition to that, they did a bunch of website fixes. They did adjustments to splits, so some of the mixed class racing wasn't putting the right amount of cars. So whether you're talking prototype or GT, mixed class racing, putting the splits and having more logic behind the way it put cars in certain fields. Updates to telemetry. They updated the auto blip to something that if you're using driving aids, auto blip is one of these updates that if you use it, sometimes it slows you down a little bit. If you don't use it, sometimes it's actually a little more consistent than not using it. Anyway, they've changed the way it does the auto blip. I think it's going to perform a little bit better, so you might want to try that out or be sensitive to it if you're currently using it. A bunch of different car updates, bunch of different track updates. So there was a whole bunch of things going on to the sim. And if that wasn't enough, 2 more additions to the sim. You now have the Toyota Camry filling out that NASCAR lineup of the Mustang, the Camaro, and now the Camry, the 3 makes that currently exist in the Xfinity series. So they've got that rounded out really nicely. And then something that I'm very excited about, and that is the new Corvette C7 Daytona Prototype. This is a 600 horsepower chromoly chassis prototype. Comes in at 2,290 pounds. This is, if you've watched IMSA, if you watched Daytona 24 Hours, you've seen this Corvette looking prototype. I mean, it's cool. It looks like a Corvette front end. It looks like Corvette tail lights, but it is a prototype nonetheless. I've driven it. It is a lot of fun to drive. It's going to be running in some mixed class racing next season, and that's going to be a great addition to the sim, in addition to having the full lineup of the big boys in the NASCAR side. So as you can hear, this is a huge update for iRacing. If you'd like to chime in your thoughts, please go to the simpit.com with this video. Put them there. If you haven't tried iRacing, probably a good time to get back in there. A lot of new things going on. It's probably a different sim than the last time you tried it. And I definitely going to get out there and do some more practicing that prototype. Maybe that's a car I'm going to run next season. Not sure just yet. I'll figure that out. I still have 1 week to go. This is the Simpit video blog. I'll see you on the track.